Greetings, comrades, and welcome to How the Red Was Won, a podcast about organizing in the South, Texas fascism, and how to fight back. I am your host, Jen Big Nasty, and before we jump into today's interview, I just wanted to give a shout out to my two Vulcan level supporters on Patreon. That is Trill and Paul. Thank y'all so much for your support there. If you would like to join them at the Vulcan level or any level starting at $2.50 per month, you can find this project, How the Red Was Won, on patreon.com. So today I am interviewing a man named Arshia Papari. He is the Socialist Green Party candidate for Texas State Representative in House District 49. That essentially runs all the way up and down north to South Austin between Mopac and I-35, covering specifically the UT campus. He is a UT student running for this office. He is the youngest candidate running for state office in Texas. He is fighting for housing justice, civil rights, and systemic change for all Texans. And you can find his platform and how to support his campaign at Arshia for Texas. That's ARSHIAFOR Texas.org. And here's that interview. All right, y'all, and welcome to the podcast. Arshia Papari, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for the invitation. Wonderful to be here with everyone.
We had some scheduling conflicts, but I'm really glad we're here now. We got it worked out. Super good. I want to start off with the easiest questions. How do people say your name correctly? What is the correct way to say it, and then what is the Americanized version?
Sure. That's a great question. I appreciate you bringing that up. My name is of a Persian origin, so it's a little bit tricky to say, but the correct version is Arshia Papari, but I'm also fine with Arshia Papari.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's not a common name that I've come across, so I want to make sure that that I say it right and that people listening can get it correct so that they can Google you correctly as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's start off just a little bit about yourself. You come from an immigrant family, and you're pretty young. I think you look very young. And so I wanted to talk about just your history of organizing up until this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am very young. I'm actually the youngest candidate on the ballot in the state of Texas for a state seat this time around.
How old are you?
So when I'm 21.
And 21.
So the minimum for running for state rep here in Texas is 21. So
amazing.
Just barely getting in there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be the youngest ever elected representative due to one guy who cut 21 shy by 20 years, 360 some days when he got elected. But aside from that, we'll be one of a handful of young folks who have attempted and sometimes been successful in trying to represent our state, and looking forward to continuing that. I guess my background, overall, yes, I'm from an Iranian immigrant family. I was born and raised in Texas, though, and came down to Austin a few years back for college, going to the University of Texas at Austin. But in terms of organizing, I first got my start back in my junior year of high school. And that was when I was going through my U.S. history courses back there and really seeing all the errors and flaws in our academic system here in Texas, in our social studies particularly. And so I brought that up to State Board of Education as the first act of political action that I took, of being why is it that there's so many falsities, so many incorrect things written into our textbooks, and also so many parts of our history of this country is completely erased and not present in textbooks. Back then, I had a set of very rose-colored glasses on, and I thought that this was a genuine error and not an implied part of the educational system here in Texas and also broadly across the country. But it was from there that I got my engagement in organizing folks, I started off testifying there and then brought other students with me that same summer to testify again at the State Board of Education when they failed to take that up and really make change on our social studies curriculum. I decided to take it on myself and wrote a legislative bill, which I tried to lobby through the Texas Senate. Unfortunately, that was not able to go into effect, but that was really bringing the ideas of having truth and transparency in our education system into the everyday politics of our state to sort of go over the heads of the State Board of Education. And it was from there that I then continued organizing, continued getting engaged with a variety of other issues, whether that be climate change issues, criminal justice issues, mental health and youth issues, sort of all over the place, engaging on advocacy. And then also went on to work in the Texas Capitol twice as a state house legislative aide, and worked under two different representatives. From there, gained a lot of experience on the inside of Texas politics and the Capitol itself, but also saw a lot of the flaws in our formalized political system, where we saw things like allowing for the death of an innocent man through execution by the state due to petty politics and not wanting to look soft on crime. A lot of these just really corrupt things within politics that really let me down. It was from there that I wanted to realign myself towards being fully rooted in the people and focused on the issues of the people, regardless of what politicians and the political system says is the nice way or the correct way to do things. And so I continued on to do a full year of hardcore organizing at the University of Texas at Austin on a variety of issues, but specifically on Palestine. And that started up one in the spring of 2024. I, along with many of my peers, were engaged heavily on the two major protests at UT Austin for Palestine and human rights that, of course, led to harm and arrest of more than 100 people. That sort of spurred my work towards organizing more heavily for students' rights, for human rights, and for just justice broadly. And up until that point, really, I was in the Democratic side of politics, and actually that summer, coming off of those protests and wanting to do something to make changes quickly as I could, I engaged with the Democratic National Convention, being elected as the second youngest delegate from Texas to go there. I was also appointed to lead the youth ceasefire delegation at the national level to coalesce a group of young delegates to the DNC and call for ceasefire, an arms embargo, and just human rights in general. Unfortunately, with our 300 folks and a little more than 300 out of the 3,800 delegates to the DNC that year, we still got completely silenced and pretty much kicked to the curb by the Democratic Party, saying, we do not care about human rights. This is not going to be a focal point of our political presence on the national level or really at any level. It was at that point, actually on the last day of the DNC in 2024, that I publicly left the Democratic Party and ended up later on that year engaging with the Green Party. And here now, after working with the Green Party and also heavily engaging in youth politics and organizing for the last a couple of years, I'm running for state rep as a socialist and a Green Party member as well, running against a Democratic opponent without any Republican in the seat, and trying to really uplift these issues to have representation for the people rather than representation on top of the people.
Ooh, I like that phrasing. That's cool. Are you still at UT?
I am. I'll be going into my senior year in about a month.
Nice. What are you studying?
I'm studying government and minoring in Middle Eastern studies.
That makes sense. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
yeah, you said you're Texas born. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Allen, actually, so north of Dallas.
Yeah.
A little bit there in the suburbs.
Nice. Is that where when your family immigrated here? Did they come to Texas?
They did, yes. They've been
Yeah.
here in Texas for around 30 years now. And yeah, we grew up in Allen. My family moved down to Austin for a short little while, but then moved back to Allen a couple years back as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So, I want to talk a little bit about Texas House District 49. It is currently held by Gina Hinojosa, who is
Mhm.
running for governor against Greg Abbott. So essentially, it is an open seat in November. Before we talk about your platform and compare it to your opponent, I want to talk a little bit just about the district itself. Exactly where is it in the city of Austin, and if it goes out of the city, and just stuff about like the demographics of that district. What is that like?
For sure. That's a great question as well. So our district is both really cool and really messed up, as many things are in
Yeah.
Texas. The really cool part is we're the most progressive, and could become the first socialist district in Texas
Mm-hmm.
because we've been gerrymandered to the point where all of the communists, socialists, and left-leaning people, and just general liberals as well, of Austin have sort of been roped into this singular district
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
cut away from the outskirts of Austin. Um, but what that looks like is generally most of central Austin. We're cut between I-35 and Mopac,
Mm-hmm.
sort of in the straight shot down from right about under the domain, straight down to into Sunset Valley, curving off to the southwest a bit.
Okay.
We have a little bit of a skinny, narrow section in the middle, right around First Street and a couple blocks down there, that sort of comes to a close, really, really tightening in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the gerrymandering section to cut away parts of the wealthier sections of central Austin into different
Oh,
districts
yeah.
to leverage the other surrounding districts, like House District 46,
Mm-hmm.
to be a little more right leaning. Although
Yeah.
the entirety of Austin, with all of its 7 different state House districts, are now fully controlled by Democrats. But in the past, there was a bit of a battle between conservatives and Democrats to where they had some weird gerrymandering things.
Yeah.
Um, but demographics wise, though, being in central Austin, we have a really cool group of folks that live in our district. We have around 210,000 constituents.
Wow.
Of
Yeah.
those, of course, UT Austin, it sits at 55,000 students. We cover entirely UT Austin as well as West Campus and all the student neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
We also cover the Capitol and City Hall. But within that, seeing that UT is a predominant part of this district, we're a little more than 25% of the population, right? If we count in, of course, West Campus hosts most of the students from UT Austin,
Mm-hmm.
along with the UT dorms.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some disparate parts of UT student populations that live in close by South Austin and close by West Austin. But generally speaking, most of the student population that lives here are in our district.
Yeah.
And so that puts us at having the UT population itself be a little more than a quarter of the
Wow.
size of our constituency.
Yeah.
And that's not counting folks from, say, St. Edwards or
Mm-hmm.
ACC or Heston-Tillotson as well, who may also be living in our district.
Yeah.
So it's a very youth-centric district in that sense. We're also the youngest district by demographics in the entirety of Texas as well.
Wow. Is that mostly because of UT, or is it
Mostly
because
because of UT.
Yeah.
but-
Okay. Yeah.
But also given that there's the trope of once you come to UT, you never want to leave Austin.
Yeah.
There's a lot of UT graduates who
Right.
have stayed and currently reside in the district as well. So there's a few different generations of Longhorns that are staying and making up that youth demographic.
Yeah.
But along with that, we have also the highest amount of renters in our district, which is why
makes
for me
sense, yeah.
housing justice is so important, because I believe around 70% of our district rents,
Wow.
which of course West Campus is all rental, that's all student areas, but that also goes into a lot of Austin just being generally unaffordable. a lot
Right.
of people not being able to afford $1 million homes are
Mm-hmm.
mostly renting in this district
Yeah.
here in Central Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from that, we're also, of course, highly educated within the state as a demographic,
Mm-hmm.
and just really an interesting concoction of all the mix of social factors that come with young people living in a city and starting to grow their lives and go from university to post-university
Yeah.
within their life structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope and what I'm trying to do is to really try and make that as easy as possible of recognizing that this is sort of an unusual district that
Mm-hmm.
most districts don't conform to,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to address those needs head on,
Yeah.
specifically with housing justice, but also with a plethora of other things in terms of economic support, in terms of groceries and childcare, a lot of the things that we focus on for having the best economic relief possible,
Yeah.
along with the more structural issues in our society too.
Yeah, do you, and I don't know if this is even information that's easy to find, but I know, at least historically, the problem with college students is that they're not necessarily registered to vote here. If they are registered, it's wherever they moved from. So is that a
Mhm.
part of your strategy to make sure that those young people are registered at their current address so that they can vote for you? Is
Yes,
that
it
a thing?
is.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And that is one of the biggest struggles with young people. And of course, young people are consistently seen as a less engaged part of politics.
Sure.
And that's twofold. One, yes, I do believe that it's tricky to really engage in the electoral side of politics when you're registered in one area and living and going to school in another area,
Yeah.
and don't necessarily know all the ins and outs about how to how to most confidently engage with the process.
Right.
But that is something that we're going to be working on going into the next semester. Our main push is going to be voter registration and
Mm-hmm.
registration into our district. And that's something that a lot of other university orgs also focus on. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that will be able to help to an extent. But we'll also be doing a big push in that regard of making sure that everyone that can vote in our district is able to uh, be registered here and vote here.
Yeah.
Um, but aside from that, the other main thing with young people is that they continuously see themselves um, as disenfranchised from
Yeah.
politics due to how foreign it is to young people when we have representatives and legislators that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and onwards. We have
Right.
Mitch McConnell continuing to supposedly continue to
From
lead
hell. Live
for,
from
for
hell. He
Senate.
is still governing. Yeah.
Totally. But when we have folks like that being the
Yeah.
primary representatives of our political system, a lot of the times youth one just don't associate with that and don't
Sure.
feel comfortable engaging there.
Yeah.
But also, there's been such a systemic push against youth
Mm-hmm.
to try and silence our voices as much as possible,
For
to
sure.
not have that revolutionary fervor that most young people naturally do.
Yeah. Very cool. One more question about the district. And I'm going to assume that this is a no because it's not really rural at all. Like, this district is very much like within the city. Are there any data centers or plans for data centers in your district?
I can answer that in some part.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure on the plans for them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but generally speaking, Austin as a whole will become the capital of data centers in the entire world
Mm-hmm.
by 2030.
Fuck.
And so what
Yeah.
that means is that we're going to have hundreds of data centers around our area. That's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily going to mean that there's going to be a data center right in central
Sure.
Austin,
Sure.
but the decisions that Austinites make and that our city council makes, as well as the Travis County
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner's Court makes, will be spurning towards having data centers be one of the biggest things
Yeah.
in our area come 2030 into the next several years.
Yeah.
Of course, Texas as a whole right now has become the heart of data centers being built across the world as well. We have the most data centers anywhere. And then within that, Austin is projected to become the top area within Texas with the most data centers anywhere. And so we're really becoming number one in a very, very bad sort
The
of
worst way. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will be working as fervently as possible to abate those and push back against
Yeah.
the destruction of our societies for corporations that
For
data
sure.
centers present.
Yes, yeah. And they are such a like visceral thing you can point to of the corporate destruction of society. I like the way that you phrase that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about you personally, your ideology, the things that you believe in, and like your theory of change. So, you call yourself a socialist Green Party candidate, but a lot of people call themselves socialists. I mean, I included, right? But it is kind of like a more umbrella term, I think, the way it's at least used colloquially. So personally, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, but I use the term socialist because it tends to be a little softer sometimes on people. But, you know, Democratic Socialists consider themselves socialists. Trotskyists, Maoists, like anarchists oftentimes consider themselves socialists. So I was just wondering where you fall on that spectrum, and then because of that, like through your ideology, what is your theory of change? Basically, like reform versus revolution.
Well, that is a great question. I would most certainly say that I'm also Marxist-Leninist. I think that, well, looking into my past, into my history of organizing, of politics, I've basically done it all while still very young, and staying humble at the root of seeing that regardless of what pathway I take on politics, it always ends up generally back at square one of the society and the system does not care about what we want to make change on, right? And so I've done that in terms of being engaged in the nonprofit space and a variety of different nonprofits in advocacy like that. That's generally seen as like the softest and easiest form of political development they can do. I've also worked within government itself as a legislative aide twice, seeing the inner workings of the capital of our legislative and political system. I've also worked at the national level, of course, not necessarily work, but been engaged in a way, being, of course, elected as a DNC delegate, and also going to DNC, seeing the inner workings of that, and now also currently have been elected as the youngest ever co-chair of the Green Party of the United States as well. So engaging on the national sense in that way. Also having in the past engaged on international work politically as well in terms of climate change, in terms of supporting the global Salute flotilla on the back end last year.
Nice.
A lot of different avenues in which I've engaged, and really my conclusion has been that regardless of what way we try to come at politics right now, things are not going to change unless we make them change, right? And that sounds very very basic, right?
Sure.
But I don't think that the idea of trying to reform and compromise with folks and slowly, possibly in the future, maybe somehow get some of the priorities that we need. One is the way that we'll ever make change. And we've seen that it hasn't, of course, right? That's the neoliberal mindset of continuing to compromise and, of course, ratchet more and more to the right because the lack of really any sort of strong bearing, any sort of spine on saying no to the right and saying we need to actually do this differently. And so I see engagement with the electoral system. Personally, this may not be the take of everyone in a similar circumstance. But personally, I don't see electoralism as in any way a method towards actual change in the way that we need.
Yeah.
Except with one caveat, right?
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
is, of course, otherwise I would not be a rookie, right?
Right.
But the one caveat being that we can use electoralism as a tool to unwind and take down the system from within. And this is something that I think has not really been tried. Because what we see is time and again, politicians get elected, go to office, and then get corrupted, or if they don't get corrupted, get pressured out into becoming useless and not standing for what they support.
Yeah.
What we also see is just an interestingly not very strong sense of politic around how to engage the electoral sphere and also the legislative sphere. Most people just say to compromise, and that's what my opponent does as well. We are, as socialists, we're a minor party because there's no socialist in office in Texas. In the state level, there are in local levels. But in terms of even the Democratic Party is also a minority within the legislature. And so their theory of change is generally always be on the defense, never really try to attack anything. And when there's something really terrible coming up, try to compromise your way to whittle it down and water it down as much as possible, but understand that you're never going to be able to change anything or make anything better, really. Regardless of whatever promises they give on the campaign trail, that's generally the method of action that they usually take. What I want to do is completely flip that and recognize that even in the minority party, even as a single socialist legislator in this state of 149 others, along with 30 plus in the Senate, what we can do is use our inherent power and authority given to us as legislators to try and purposefully attack the system. And that looks like a variety of different tools that I can go into, but using the nitty-gritty details of legislative rules of order, of everything that's been given to us from hundreds of years ago that are still there, that we can still make use of, that just aren't made use of because it seems petty or it seems annoying. But if we're not annoying, then we're not going to get treated with the respect and with the understanding of the power that we hold as in relation to if we can do that and if we were to do that. And so there's a lot of different systems along with rules. There's a few other strategies that I've been working on developing to make that happen. But really the core of my campaign and the core of my ethos and focus on electoralism in this point of time goes back to a quote by the one of the founders of the INLA, Irish National Liberation Army, also formerly IRA member and Sinn Féin, all of that. There's a whole long story, but basically his name is Seamus Costello, and he led those groups, and towards the end, while he was moving away from guerrilla tactics and into formalized politics with the Sinn Féin, brought forth a statement of if we have one or two MPs or TDs with the right caliber of politics, we can stick by that politics and work together. Then we can break down the system from the inside and expose that and let the capitalists see that and also unravel everything that has been positioned to do us so much harm as the public. And so that is what I've been going by. I may have not exactly quoted that, but that is a general paraphrasing of his idea of socialist politics within electoralism, of treating electoralism not as the end all be all or as the real top way to make any sort of change, but as one of the most powerful tools to use a system which is already socially accepted, which is already the general way of things, to go into that and use whatever power you can within that system, however you can, to unravel it from the inside, to support people. And so aside from that, I would say, aside from that was the very drawn out caveat. But aside from that caveat, I would say that generally, if you go around electoralism the way it's always been gone around, I do not think that is in any way a useful engagement of time and energy. And I personally push towards a revolutionary sense of politics, recognizing that not only our country, but the entire world right now is at the hands of capitalism and at the hands of the wealthiest elites in our country and around the world that only profit from the disprofit of the masses, right? And that means profiting from disprofit in any way, such as from the general means of regular capitalism, from transactions and whatnot, but also in disprofit of the public by means of taking what the public needs to survive, to thrive, and to continue to exist generally as the masses, and turning those into systems of not only wealth development, also oppression of the working classes to solidify their rule over them. And so what we see is things like Jeff Bezos recently saying that maybe water should be prioritized for data centers and AI instead of for humans. And what we also see is things like other billionaires I know have been talking about instead of paying people to sort of switch over back to the model of what we had during the 1800s and before, of mine towns having company scripts within those tech companies to pay their employees in generative AI quantities of those segments of AI that they can use for whatever they like, that really internalizes and continues and prolongs and really solidifies the idea of having corporate and oligarchic oversight of our entire society and of the people. And so that is why I think that we really need to spurn forth revolutionary fervor rather than to lean into reform and to compromise and things like that with any sense, but also specifically within electoral politics.
I like this answer. It's explicitly Leninist to run in bourgeois elections as a third party, right? As an open socialist to, to spread the message, right? Because this is a platform that exists, that is given. I mean, it's not given to you. You have to work for it. You have to raise money. You have to do a lot of work for it. But it is a platform that's available to you to use to spread this message. And also, like, whether you win or not, it is also a good way to point out, like, the shortcomings of the electoral process, right? This is literally Leninism 101. And I've heard the argument from people, specifically, like, and this is not a bash against the DSA, but most of the time DSA candidates run under the Democratic Party ticket, for better or worse. And I know a lot of them do it for ballot access, and there are reasons for it. But, I think that when you do that, you are muting your message and you are really putting a lot of limitations on yourself when you are using this party's platform and doing it the way you're doing it through the Green Party, through the third party, more as an independent. I talked to Greg Stoker recently, he's also using the Green Party platform for ballot access. It makes so much more sense because it frees you up from those constraints of the fucking DNC, which you got to see for yourself. Like, the massive limitations that they put on people, specifically young people, radicals within their party structure. So I think that's really cool. And you already even answered my next question, which is what can a socialist in the Texas State House do? I feel like you have a good plan on how to approach it. So yeah, hell yeah, I think I like your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So why did you decide to go with the Green Party? Are you a member of other orgs? Like, did you look into maybe running as PSL and joining them, or are you a member of DSA? Like, have you explored other options, or did the Green Party thing just kind of fall into your lap and it fit?
Well, I think it's a variety of reasons. But going back into what you said, I really want to make sure that I can be true to myself and also true to the people's needs and the people's just regular wants as well in a candidate, to be able to be reflective of that rather than everything that not only the DNC but also the Texas Democratic Party stipulates in all the barriers there. And so that's why I decided not to run Democrat. The real reason why I decided not to run Democrat is, of course, seeing the DNC head on as formerly one of the, I guess, highest levels of political operatives within that party, and really confronting power at that moment, confronting the presidential campaign of 2024, and seeing them so bluntly just disregard. At that time, I guess we would have been called progressives, but a lot of my colleagues there as well, the DNC ceasefire delegation, also decided to leave the party. And so I guess there's socialists and just the left wing of Democrats that were at that point reform minded really just turned me off from anything of engaging in the Democratic Party. I think running Green, I decided to do that, one, because of that past experience, but also because the Green Party is really the tool within our toolbox as socialists, as communists, as anarchists, as whatever we want to do, to have a foot into the door of electoralism. Because the Green Party stands for that on the left, whereas there is no other national party and national infrastructure to make that a possibility. And while I support a lot of PSL candidates and a lot of the work they've done as well, unfortunately, they don't have a national presence in terms of electoral feasibility, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people say that green politics is not feasible. I don't think that is true. But in terms of the PSL sense, not having ballot access on a national or even local level is very, very hard to become a real political force. But I go back to something that Butch Ware has said many times. Of course, he was the vice president candidate in 2024 and recently a candidate for the Green Party in California. And his statement is also always keen to the point of pointing to Malcolm X's thoughts. Is either going to be the ballot or the bullet. And while we're at the stage of thinking about the ballot, the main tool we have to make the ballot possible is the Green Party as socialists, because we have that ballot access in Texas. The Green Party has 8 more years of guaranteed ballot access due to a statewide candidate that was able to win a minimum threshold of statewide votes back in 2024.
Nice.
And then nationally, of course, our party is ever continuously focused on having our ability to access ballots nationwide. We're not in every single state, unfortunately, extremely actively, but we are in most of them. And still, we see things with the national ticket of the Green Party a lot of the times being sued by the Democratic Party off of ballots across states. That happened in, I believe, 11 different states with the Stein campaign back in 2024. And the Democratic Party spent 9 times the amount of the Stein campaign's entire budget just suing the Stein campaign off of ballots across the country. And so it's a sad reality, but it also is at least something of a possibility, though still very, very hard to access. really, really viably in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of
In terms
sense.
of DSA, though, I forgot to mention that. In
Oh,
terms
yeah,
of
yeah.
DSA, I am a member of, I'd say, YDSA.
Okay, yeah.
I engage with them more heavily. I'm a member of UT YDSA
Okay,
at UT
cool.
Austin. I'm also an Austin DSA member, though unfortunately they decided not to endorse me
Wow.
um,
Did they
due
endorse the
to
Democrat?
they did not endorse the Democrat either. I'll just generally say there were different political tensions and different political leanings. There are some members of Austin DSA that are on my opponent's campaign,
Sure.
and so there's been some issues in terms of trying to
Interesting.
pull them further to the left
Mm-hmm.
in their electoral strategy this cycle. But
Yeah.
I think generally, though, at the national level, possibly not at the local level here, but at the
Mm-hmm.
national level, uh, I'm seeing a lot of good things come from DSA.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just uh, posit that they need to really look introspectively at what it looks like to be a socialist candidate effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I, though I do support a lot of the work that's been done by DSA at the national level, I do feel like at some point, if we continue to only work within these systems to reform them, we become the system itself. And that is, to an extent, the goal of DSA to do a dirty break from the Democratic Party and become its own party. But
Yeah.
it's also a point of contention of to what extent will candidates that then get elected by DSA bend to the whims of power and to the whims of those around them in these spaces rather than standing with the people. I think generally we've seen a lot of good, but also a few points of faltering that need to be addressed and change. Well, I think that is just my general views on DSA things. Of course, there's a lot of difference within the rest of the organizing spaces as well. I think overall, though, that the best way to engage in a truly socialist, even communist sense of working into electoral politics is to do that through the Green Party, if you want to, if you have the capacity and ability to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
To, as you said, one, get the authentic message of socialism out there without it being watered down by the Democratic Party. And then two, to also try and govern as truly to your beliefs as possible.
Yeah. Very cool. I want to get into the nitty gritty stuff now. I want to talk a little bit about your opponent, and then I want to kind of give you some space to like differentiate yourself from her, because I'm gonna be honest, she is pretty progressive for a Democrat. Definitely a good thing that she won the primary. It might have been easier for you, honestly, if she had lost. But so she's pretty young as well. I think she might be like right around 30. She's obviously she's a woman. She's an immigrant. She was a DACA recipient. She's a dreamer. She's secretary treasurer for the Texas AFL-CIO. She worked in the Biden education department. I would say that was a negative, but so she has a pretty impressive resume. And then her platform again is pretty good for a Democrat, for a Texas Democrat, because of her labor history, because of her status as an immigrant. I think that it's a really cool idea, and I don't know if you did this on purpose. This is just your district, right? But the fact that there's not a Republican, I think, really takes the bite out of what liberals like to say about third-party candidates. Oh, you're just a spoiler. Oh, you're taking votes from the Democrat. You want the Republican, blah, 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 right? Like, they can't say that because it's literally just you, the Green Party, the socialist candidate, versus the Democrat, which I think really does work to your favor, at least when it comes to attack ads or whatever. I don't know if they've even come out with those yet, or if they're just ignoring you completely. But and I don't want to bash her. I don't want you to have, to talk shit about, her name is, Montserrat, is it Garibay? Garibay? Garibay, okay. So I just want to give you a little space here to make your pitch, right? To why do you think that your district should support you over her?
Absolutely. And that is a very common question I get. Of course, this was a very heated primary of the Democratic Party. It was the largest primary, largest amount of contenders in a primary in the state.
Interesting.
This cycle with 8 different Democrats, including one Democratic Socialist who ran, but unfortunately was not able to win that primary due to a lot of different, just generally also being pushed out of not getting as much vocal space as needed.
Sure.
But I think, generally speaking, this district is always going to be progressive.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless of who is running or what is happening, the district is always going to be progressive. And I'd say probably most of the Democratic nominee contenders were also angling themselves as progressives. But I think what really differentiates us is the fact that there was one Democratic Socialist that wasn't running as progressive. She was running as a socialist as well here in this district as a Democrat. I think that's the main difference of, yes, there's a lot of generally nice sounding progressive ideas and thoughts around this race and around my opponent. But I think the difference is, do we want a progressive in office or do we want a socialist in office? And I'd bargain we need a socialist in office to meet the times right now.
I'd have to agree.
Yes, thank you. I think really it comes down to the modus operandi of what is the difference between a progressive and a socialist. And I touched on this earlier as we discussed, but the real difference is how you go about politics. So yes, all of the platforms might sound similar, but the difference is how you get those done. What we've seen in the past with progressives and representatives in this area, but also Gina Hinojosa, unfortunately, is compromise. The idea of compromise at the root of everything. The ads and the statements may always be saying, we're fighting for you, we're out here to support the people of Travis County or Austin, and we're going to fight the Republicans. But in reality, the fight never happens. In reality, it's always just, we're going to go ahead and water down whatever insanely hardcore Republican things come at us and hope for the best and say that we did as much as we could without really investigating the inner belief structure of what the point of a position such as this is. Is it just to be another career step, another way to engage in the political system and stay connected with politics? Or is it a way to really transformatively shape politics, not only for the city, for the state, but also as an example of political action in the legislative field into an overview of what nationally people can be doing and to set an example in that way. And so I think that is what really differentiates us. One side continually always choosing to compromise regardless of the progressive tropes and the statements and ads that say they're going to fight.
Right.
And on the other hand, extensively analyzing everything before us and how we can interact with the state legislature and mold it to the desires that we already have.
Yes.
However we can, regardless of what that looks like in terms of politics. And so what I'll bring up as well here, and not necessarily related because my opponent was not part of this, but to really highlight this as just the general progressive Democrat or regular Democrat trope, is back last year during the summer, we also had a bunch of terrible things happening then with a special session to completely redistrict the congressional maps. If you remember, after that was happening, California and New York threatened to redistrict their own maps to become more democratic. It sort of started a political civil war nationally because our governor was like, we're going to appease Trump as much as possible and win some more Republican congressional seats by cutting out marginalized voters.
Yeah, specifically black districts. Yeah.
Black and Latino districts.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that was insane. And rightfully so, everyone called it out as insane and said, this cannot happen. This cannot stand. What are our elected leaders that say they're going to fight doing right now? And what they did was a host of town halls and discussion times and I went to several of them, attempting to speak of the committee on, I believe, like voting rights. I forget the exact name of the committee, but some of the different committees within the Texas House, hosting sessions to hear from the public about this. And then, of course, their Democratic lawmakers within those committees, listening, sitting there, agreeing with folks, saying, yes, we need to do something about this. We can't let this stand. And what it came down to was they essentially did nothing because, well, generally speaking, they don't have the power to do much, right? They're a minority party. They're always going to get overrun by the Republican votes. So they don't have a real way to do things if they continue in the exact way that they have been operating in politics, which is to not make a mess or get on anyone's bad side too extensively. Because they will come out and get on some people's bad sides, but in a manageable sense. And so the last-ditch attempt, which I actually know a few of the folks that helped organize this, that were really mad when it fell apart, was to do the quorum break, to have the Democrats decide that this is insane. We're not going to engage with this. We're going to leave the state, and realistically, it's classified as a dereliction of duty in the criminal sense, but it's basically fleeing the state, running away to Chicago and New York to wait out the electoral term, and to wait out the term of the special session. Unfortunately, special sessions can get recalled whenever they feel like it. So realistically, it would have been to wait out the electoral term, which would have been until December, when this idea of making any sort of changes like these would not be realistic anymore, would not be viable to enter into our new electoral system there, right? So it would have been possible to work. And of course, this is very, very tolling on people. Of course, leaving your state, leaving your family and your job to live in a completely different state, short term, for several months on end, would be very tiring and harmful to those people that take that upon themselves. But again, that is the role and duty of a state representative. That is the role and duty of someone who is leading their community. Instead, what we saw was that this was a quorum break that should have lasted several months. Instead, it lasted barely a few days before the first Democrats started to call back and come back to Texas. And the folks that held out the longest, I think, held out for a month. And that was only a couple stragglers that stayed and were like, I'm really mad that my colleagues didn't stay with me. And that was predominantly the Black caucus as well in the state ledge. But realistically, almost all the Democrats came back within 2 weeks. And I've heard from people that even on the flight to leave Texas, people were asking, why are we doing this? I can't wait to get back.
Oh my God.
Why should we even leave? And it is things like that. That is the biggest sort of political risk the Democratic Party has taken in the last several years here in Texas, right, at the legislative side of things. And there, when the middle was hitting fire, the Democrats were folding immediately before the plane had
before they even left.
Before they even left. Some of them were just being coaxed into being like, you have to come with us, otherwise people will be embarrassed that you're not leaving with the
Even
rest of the
trying.
class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of them didn't even want to go in the first place. But then there was many more who were feeling they shouldn't be going or didn't want to go
Yeah.
as they were leaving.
Yeah.
And
Ugh.
I think that is the problem of where the biggest political action that you take, one, does not get committed to by
Right.
those
Right.
taking the action, and two, uh, is in itself something that is just not wasn't going to be feasible with the type of people that we have right now, right? And unfortunately, I think that given that as an example, and what we see in our politics, if we have another quote progressive in this district, we're only bound to face the same things
Yeah.
when the moments are really tough and when we actually need things to happen, rather than for people to just say they're really, really fighting for us
Yeah.
while not fighting at all.
Yeah.
And I'd say that's the main difference. But this
Yeah.
has been a very long-winded answer.
No, it's good.
But I'd say in terms of policy, though, she does have a lot of progressive policy. I
Sure.
will say my policy is a lot more socialist and a lot more revolutionary.
Yeah, so let's jump into
and-
that. I want to hit
Sure.
your three main policy points. I want you to hit those and expand on them and tell me why they matter.
Absolutely. So the three main things are, first and foremost, as a renter myself, seeing that most of our district is 70% renters, very much young people, is putting housing first, housing justice. I believe that housing should be a human right, and that it shouldn't be something that the capitalist classes leverage over your heads to kick you out and really destroy your life if you don't continue to be part of the capitalist system.
For sure.
And what I mean by that is having a social support net so that we can stop homelessness. Homelessness is very, very easy to end. Yeah. It's just that, one, it is profitable to keep it going, and two, the capitalist class does not want to see an end to it because that is the deterrent of the regular masses.
Yeah.
Is the threat of impoverishment and homelessness that keeps the masses at bay and docile to not move towards revolution or generally to not oppose power.
Or even to strike, or even to exercise power. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So putting housing as my number one priority of one, overall working towards making it a human right and something that everyone can have, regardless of your of your financial ability.
You explicitly have freeze the rent is like the top thing on your website.
Freezing the rent, yes, and that does come, of course, from Mamdani. That is very much so taking what we've seen in New York as something that has gotten people engaged and also has worked out. Because recently, I believe last week or a week ago or a couple weeks back, he was able to pass forth a rent freeze for 2 million New Yorkers out of the 8 million there, which is a pretty sizable accomplishment.
Good, yeah.
For a couple years. And I will say that is very different than what we have in Texas. It's a complete different ballgame here in Texas, but I still think we can get it done if we have the right modus operandi on our side as well. But it's freezing the rent, and not only with that freezing the rent, but also at the same time building social housing with the budget surplus that we have in Texas, and also subsidizing housing. Personally, right now, I'm living in an apartment that has not necessarily rent control, but smart housing, which subsidizes rent for a small amount of folks that make less than $65,000 a year. Just like a little small.
That's most people in this city, I feel like.
Yeah. There's a lot of people could be using this and benefiting from it. Yeah. But there's just not the capacity for it. There's only a few little allotted spots, mostly for students, honestly, in the West Campus area. But this is a program run by Austin. And this has been really helpful because otherwise, if I were to not be paying the rent that I am right now, my rent would be $500 or $600 more than it is. Right. And so I think this is something that's uniquely beneficial to me, but is also a system that should be available to others. and should not be in such a limited sense where for every 10 people that need to use this system of smart housing, only one is really able to.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So it's sort of a trio package on housing of freezing the rent, building social housing, and developing subsidization programs statewide. Aside from that, in affordability, we have just overall childcare and groceries as well, lowering the cost of groceries, possibly doing subsidization plans on a statewide level there as well for necessary things. Of course, we saw the cutting of SNAP and a lot of areas where the federal government is letting people down to where I believe our state shouldn't have to, but needs to step up and support ourselves here, even though the federal government should be taking care of it. And then also childcare, where having universal childcare, something else that's been successful in New York, different ballgame again, but can be done here in Texas as well. And I'd like to see happen to be able to, one, take care of our kids, and also, given that we have an abortion ban, if Republicans and the far right are going to force women to give birth regardless, they should care about what happens to children and to society after that, rather than just only caring about kids before they're born.
Right. I'm really glad that you brought this up, because I was gonna give you the lightest little bit of shit, because you have on your platform here the topic "Fight Back Against Fascism." You do mention abortion ban, but it's really not explicitly spelled out anything else about that. So I did want to get your take on that, about if you want to work towards overturning that, or how you want to approach that, because that is an issue that I think it's obviously important to me as a woman, but I think it's important to a whole lot of Texans, because that is something that Texas is one of the few states with a full ban, and we have seen pregnant people, several, die already from getting denied medical care at a hospital. Women who were already miscarrying, but the hospitals refused to give them care, and then they went septic and died. So I'd really like to hear your take on that.
Absolutely. So yes, in terms of fighting back against fascism, 100% everything that is fascist in our society. Yeah. And we try to, that is purposefully sort of broad, given that there's so much that can be discussed there, whether that's from students' rights and protests to other sorts of freedom of speech, to abortion bans, to ICE, to everything.
Yeah.
And so with abortion bans, absolutely, I'd want to revoke that, and also just make abortion and reproductive care overall available to whoever needs it, however they need it. It really should not be a decision of the state. It has to be a decision of the individual to choose for themselves, for their own body and their own well-being. And that's something I'll work towards in the legislature, but also personally, aside from campaigning, I'm also working with the reproductive rights organization as well, as an organizer here in Texas.
Okay, awesome.
So very much in support of that. And I guess in terms of other things in fight back against fascism within that platform point, it's also, as I said, putting students' rights and the freedom of speech first, putting our academic integrity and academic freedoms at heart as well as working to abolish ICE, trying to end 287G agreements, which generally turn our local police forces into ICE as well. Yeah. And everything overall that is harming society in a way that is really oppressing the masses.
Yeah, for sure.
But in the prior part, though, as well, going into my second of 3 points is the end corporate power section, which is a pretty bold take of, I think overall, again, as we mentioned with my political leanings, is towards revolution and not towards reform. I think the fact that we have corporations that have so much power in our country that really govern the lives of so many.
Well, and in our city even.
In our city as well.
It's so concentrated here, yeah.
Yeah, with the Dogs Head development as well in Southeast Austin.
Yes.
That is just corporate corruption at play, or not even corporate corruption. That is just corporations doing what they intend to do.
Yes, and
that
the
is the
government just
function of
saying,
corporate.
"Take it here you go."
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's been info release on this that pretty much every single council member in Austin, except for Crystal Lane, Crystal Lane has been good on this,
Good.
but all the other ones have taken tens of thousands of dollars from that corporation,
Wow.
and also from the law firm representing them, and are pretty much just bought and paid for. And that's one of the main issues in politics. And again, also goes into ending corporate power of every facet of the corruption of our society because of corporations, whether that looks like the destruction of unions, the destruction of workers' rights and the right to organize, and also whether that looks like the destruction of our environment as well, or if it looks like the bribing of our politicians. And so I'll go in reverse order there.
Okay.
With the bribing of our politicians, I had a really in-depth discussion about this last night, actually, with a colleague, is that what we see and what we have is that in the East and in Asia, other areas of the world, people recognize that there's corruption and just understand that some parts of their government have corruption, right? They say that, yeah, you can bribe a police officer or you can bribe your politician and then get a contract or whatever.
Yeah.
They understand that's corruption. In the West, instead of understanding that we have corruption, we pretend we don't have corruption, that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And instead we've legalized it and called it lobbying and corporate campaign donations. And realistically, that should all be illegal. That is just pure corruption.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. The whole industry of lobbying is just paying a specialized person in government to be able to bribe politicians on your behalf. And it's mostly done by those with the most money. And that's why we see the worst things happening, because those with the biggest pockets get to govern our countries, our societies, and our states. And that is because corporations really run our state and run our country, not politicians.
Yeah.
And so there was a statement about this, about vouchers as well. I forget their names, but it was that Governor Abbott or Dan Patrick are not the most powerful men politically in Texas. The most powerful men in Texas politically are two brothers in West Texas sitting on oil inheritancy that have been able to bribe both of them into doing what they will for their own ends. And it's that issue of, if you have the money to do what you want, you will do what you want. And if there's no guardrails against it, then it will continue to happen. And so we also saw this with Miriam Adelson, one of the top Zionist donors in the country, and also one of the top donors to Donald Trump, having donated $250 million to his re-election in 2024. She then came around to Texas and decided to bribe every single state legislature, and I'm saying literally every single one of them, tens of thousands of dollars to legalize gambling in our state. And when you have that, it's really hard to have the will of the people succeed, because you just have money talking rather than the people talking. And this is something that's unfortunately true for both Talarico and Hinojosa as well. I believe Hinojosa took $4,000 from her, and Talarico took $59,000 from her in the last legislative session. I believe they both said that it wasn't meant to be in any bad sense, but realistically, it's still corrupting power.
Sure.
And so my take is trying to revoke Citizens United however we can, but also generally introducing other facets and means to take down corporate power in our politics and bring forth the power of the people. And then also, aside from that, to focus on our environment as well. I'm a Green Party candidate. I have a long history of engaging in climate work. I've done climate work internationally as well as at the local level. And I think we need to have a livable future, because regardless of whatever we say in this discussion, in our elections, in the next several years of politics going back and forth with each other, regardless of what happens, if we're all going to be dead in 100 years because our
Poisoned the
world,
planet. Yeah.
because we've destroyed the planet, then it doesn't matter, right? Like, there's no point in discussing a socialist future if there's no future to be had. And so, not to be a nihilist or doomerist, but seeing that, I think, is very urgent, that we need to take action, take powerful action to fix our environment, to stop corporations from destroying it, and also bring back the regulations that have been cut, to further those regulations, to further development and support of our natural environment.
Yeah.
And to me, that looks like a Green New Deal, but for Texas, and trying to make that happen. But also saying no to things like SpaceX launching their rockets from the Galveston area and destroying our beaches, saying no to things like data centers, which I believe it was, forget who it was, but I think it was Abbott that said data centers are going to be one of my big priorities for the next several years. Is like, when our politicians are in the business of making profit from destroying our state and our society for the short term without caring about the impacts of the long term, then we are really fucked. And so I think we really need to make that stop however we can.
Yeah.
And then aside from environmental things, is ending corporate power in workers' rights. One of the main things I would like to work towards is general support of unions and workers' rights and strikes and everything as well. I was actually on a picket with the news workers of Austin a couple weeks back.
Yeah.
But what we see generally is that unions, although Texas is the top 4 state for having the most amount of unions in the country.
It's just because it's big, though.
Just because it's big, pretty much.
It's still a right to work state.
Powerful economy. We still have right to work. We need to repeal that. But we also just generally don't have a lot of power with unions. And this is not just a thing for Texas. It's very specific to Texas because we engage so heavily in anti-union work at the state level and supporting union busting. But generally, though, nationally, unions don't have much power anymore. And they lost that power during the Reagan era back in the 80s. The top of strikes across the country were in the 80s. And then from there, it took a very, very sharp decline. It hasn't reached like even, I'd say maybe 10% of the capacity of what it was back in the 80s now. Yeah. And I think one of the main reasons is that our system of unionizing and union development, which I think is one of unionizing as a principle, is one of the most powerful ways to change a society in any shape or form. And it gives the most amount of power to the working people. But our system, where you have to bargain with your own company and just be one-on-one with your company, is very detractive from the process of building power. Because instead of giving workers an ability to support each other across the lines, across the industry, it's just one company dealing with one group of small workers that can easily be squashed. Whereas in Europe, in the more developed areas, in terms of socialism, their unions are able to negotiate as an industry rather than as a specific company. And that creates a lot more ability to have strong unions, to have demands met, have strikes be quicker, faster, and more extensive in terms of getting returns and getting things that are needed and wins. But unfortunately, we don't have that, and that's due extensively to our system of always being on the side of the corporation and the company and the bosses rather than ever supporting workers, which makes it so hard, and which is why we see Starbucks union workers have to go store to store because they're all franchises
Right.
to win unions,
Yeah.
rather than just being like, we're all going to unionize, deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is one of the biggest problems that we have, not just in Texas, but naturally, and something I'd like to work against and try to change. But I think generally speaking, though, that is a majority of my plans, which if you were to know between my platform and that of my opponent, none of this is being spoken about in my opponent's platform.
Yeah.
It might all seem, at first glance, it might all seem similar.
Yeah.
But realistically, there's a very deep divide of
Yeah.
progressivism versus socialism.
And I think it's really important because I think that's the third time you've said that, and I think it is important to drive that point home, is that progressivism doesn't really mean anything. I don't know if you feel comfortable saying that. I say it all the time.
Yeah.
I think that it is really, at this point, just a thing that liberals say to make themselves sound better. And again, I don't know your opponent at all. So I don't know where she's coming from with that, but I think that it is just like, no, I'm a progressive Democrat. Like, it makes it sound nicer and better and not beholden to the same corporate interests that every fucking member of the Democratic Party is beholden to, because that's what that party is. So I appreciate you reiterating that a socialist and a progressive are completely different things. I think that's a good thing to like drive home on the trail, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. We're getting towards the end here, so anything else that you want to reiterate again, and then how can people find you, how can they donate to your campaign, and any closing thoughts?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, yes, progressivism versus socialism. And I'll reiterate with, again, butchering the quote from Seamus Costello. I believe if we have one or two, in his words, legislative members in office that are of the right caliber of politics and stick by that caliber of politics, that we can take down the system as a whole.
Yes.
And I think really the choice in Austin, given that we don't have a Republican in the race at all, we don't have a Libertarian, is, do you want to make real change, or do you want to go progressivism again?
Yes.
And we've been trying progressivism for years, because this is always a progressive seat, and we still get nothing done. And I guess in terms of last points, you can find us on primarily Instagram as our main social media outlet. Again, given that we have a very youthful district, we decided that larger, more old sort of things don't work well. So Instagram at Arshia for Texas, ARSHIA FORTEXAS.
And I will link this and your website in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And also our website is also just arshiafortexas.org, all spelled out as well. And there you can read more about our policies. You can join in to volunteer by signing up there on our website. You can also donate there at the bottom of our page as well to help support our work. If you feel called to support us in any other way, my DMs are always open on Instagram. That's usually the best way to contact us. But our email is also arshia@arshiafortexas.org. And we'd love to hear from folks. We'd love to engage in collaborative events, actions, anything coming up. If you all have orgs that might be willing to endorse us, would really appreciate that. Any individuals that might want to endorse us as well, also very welcome. Realistically, looking at this, I'll close out with one more point, is that Austin, while it's generally seen as a safe Democratic seat and that there's no Republican, it is sort of the flip side of Republicans. And we'll say, of course, both the Democratic and Republican Party basically are the same. They share the same donors. They share generally the same system of action, regardless of who holds office. They never make change.
Yes.
But when it comes to elections, when there's a blue seat that doesn't have a Republican opponent, what happens is that red MAGA turns into blue MAGA. And we have liberals that continue to really just act like socialism is going to destroy the country.
It's so scary.
Threat to It's so scary. We're all here to eat your children and like destroy the world. So really, whether it's said or not said, socialists are always pushed out to the side, kicked to the curb as much as possible. And so there's already been articles coming out from the Austin Chronicle, from
Wow.
KUT, from the Texan, saying that Montserrat Garibay has won this election. We're looking forward to seeing her in the Capitol when the election hasn't even happened, just based off of the primary results.
Wow.
Because these primaries are almost always defining of the
Sure.
election results.
Is
And
there an
so we've
opportunity for a debate? Is that a thing that can happen between now and November?
There is, if there's nonprofits, 501c3s or
They have to put it
C4s that
on.
want
Yeah,
to put on forums, those can be public debates between us
Cool.
on any sort of issue. But I'll also be trying to set up a debate myself. And really, it's just, we've been pretty much blackballed from the entire
Sure.
political organizational set of everything
Yeah.
in Austin, given our values and given our desire to be completely different than Democrats.
Right.
And so either folks want to keep the establishment or they are scared of the establishment and don't want to step on toes or relationships that they still have with powerful establishment figures, to where we've been pretty much just sidelined, both in the media and also in organizational frameworks.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to support us and is willing to, very much would appreciate that. But also donations go a really long way.
Yes.
Anything anyone can donate would be very helpful. With a very tiny, minuscule budget, but our opponent has raised $600,000 and has around $100,000 cash on hand,
Wow.
easily surpassing everyone else on the Democratic nominee side.
Yeah.
Kathy Tovo also raised $500,000.
Oh, I bet she did. Yeah.
In running against her.
Yeah. Oh, I bet
and-
she did.
Yeah, and that is another big problem where it goes into ending court power of we don't have publicly funded elections,
Right.
so folks are incentivized
Yeah.
to be corrupt
Yeah.
and to take in tons of money and have to raise tons of money. In fact, it is estimated generally by political scientists that to win a Texas House seat, you have to have at least $500,000.
Yeah.
We do not have that, but if you want to work towards helping us get there,
Yes.
please let me know.
Yes.
And otherwise, I will say just let's fix Texas, y'all.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, Arshia, for your time today. And hang on the line for just a couple of minutes. We want to make sure that everything uploads. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.